Well, the price of gasoline in Iran is in American gallons would be 4 to 10 cents a gallon.
10 cents.
As far as California, you have prices nearly $7 a gallon. Here in the East Coast, it's somewhere between $4 to $5 a gallon, 4.50, 4.60 on average, and it only is getting worse.
$7. Same war, same strait.
The belief is that there's this has been the belief for a couple of weeks now, that an attack could be imminent. And they are on full alert in Iran. It could be tonight, it could be tomorrow, it could be over the weekend. No one knows. It may not.
Tonight?
If there's war and the Americans do indeed carry out their threats to destroy Iran's critical infrastructure, then Iran will do the same to the Israeli regime and the US proxies in the Persian Gulf region, which would mean that those countries will become empty of its population because it will just not be possible for people to live there anymore. That's the same would be true with American troops.
Dubai, Abu Dhabi, empty. This is what Marandi is describing from inside Tehran. Stay with me. Project Freedom was supposed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Instead, Iran shot down a 30 million US Reaper drone over the strait. Saudi Arabia and Oman reportedly shut US forces out of their bases. And the whole operation quietly died. And then this man, speaking live from Tehran right now, while we're being charged $7 a gallon, picked up a glass of water and drank it on camera. I'll show you why. Professor Mohammad Marandi teaches at the University of Tehran. He's negotiated with Western delegations. He's speaking from inside. And what he's telling you right now is completely different from what Washington is saying. Here's what he said. Before anything else, here's Marandi's verdict on where this war stands right now.
So, in the 39 days of fighting, we went from unconditional surrender to ultimately a 10-point plan as the framework for negotiations. That was a humiliating defeat, and Trump was attacked for it, left and right in the United States. He was ridiculed, and then his spokeswoman, she said, "No, we threw it in the bin," but he accepted this. That's the only reason why Iran halted the fighting. Otherwise, Iran was more than prepared to continue. But it was a symbolic defeat for the United States, for Trump in particular, or Project Freedom. If all they had to do was just sit back and wait for Iran to collapse if things were going well. So obviously they weren't going well. This also failed, and it was clear from the beginning that it would fail. I think it was a sign of desperation. And so, regardless of what the reasons were behind it, whether the Saudis did prevent Trump from using their airspace, or whether that was not the case, it wouldn't have made a difference. They would have failed, as they were failing when this thing came out of this. So another defeat for Trump. It's failure after failure, and if the United States attacks again, they will fail. They will only make the world economic crisis worse, and probably make a global depression inevitable. Right now, we are definitely heading for a major recession.
3 clips. That's his verdict. Now, here's why he's saying it, and what he's seeing to back it up. Welcome back to ARM Geopolitics. I'm Aaron Johnson, and on this channel, we don't just cover the news. We cut through the noise, dominate the narrative, and give you the analysis mainstream media is too scared to run. Vigilance is our shield, truth is our weapon. Let's get into it. The most underreported story of Project Freedom isn't what Iran did. It's what America's own allies did, or refused to do.
Now reports coming out of NBC say that Saudi Arabia, Oman, and many other Gulf countries had actually shut down their U.S. access or the U.S.'s access to military bases and their assets in the region, which prevented Trump in the United States from engaging in Project Freedom.
Wait for Iran to collapse if things were going well. So obviously they weren't going well. This also failed, and it was clear from the beginning that it would fail. It was a sign of desperation. And so regardless of what the reasons were behind it, whether the Saudis did prevent Trump from using their airspace or whether that was not the case, it wouldn't have made a difference. They would have failed, as they were failing when they started, because their hope was that the Iranians would be intimidated into not responding, and that was not the case. And we saw, regardless of who struck the Emirates, some say the Iranians did it, some say the Saudis did it, some say the Americans did it. But regardless of that, a number of ships were hit, and nothing came out of this. So another defeat for Trump.
Two threads here, both matter. Thread 1, NBC reported Gulf states blocked US base access. Marandi acknowledges the reports, but his core point is that even if true, it wouldn't have changed the outcome. The operation was still going to fail regardless, because it was built on a false assumption that Iran would back down. Thread 2, Marandi traces this failure back to a pattern that started before Project Freedom.
If we just go back during the last year, during the 12-day war, Trump demanded unconditional surrender after a couple of days. And that war didn't end well. And it was clear that when it came to a one-on-one confrontation with the Israeli regime, even though the United States was involved, they were refueling Israeli regime jets, and Jordan was helping the radar systems in the Persian Gulf. All of them were assisting the Americans and the Israeli regime. And Turkey's airspace and the US bases in Turkey were assisting with the war against Iran. Yet, despite all that, the Iranians won the war, even though it was a blitzkrieg attack. So, in the 39 days of fighting, we went from unconditional surrender to ultimately a 10-point plan as the framework for negotiations. That was a humiliating defeat.
Two wars, two demands for unconditional surrender, two failures. 12-day war, Israel and US together. With Jordan's radar and Gulf bases, Iran wins. 39-day war, full US campaign, ends in ceasefire, 0 of 4 objectives achieved. Project Freedom launched. Iran fires within 60 minutes. Gulf states reportedly block base access, canceled within days. 3 escalations, 3 failures, each one leaving the US in a worse position than before. Morandi's read is that the next one will be the same, but with economic consequences that will be catastrophically worse. And then Iran shot down a $30 million US surveillance drone over the strait the US was supposed to have just reopened. Not a missile at a base, a drone over the water in broad daylight. And Marandi explains what this means.
Not only are there reports seemingly every time any kind of U.S. aircraft, military aircraft gets close to Iran, it is targeted. But there's also the fact that Iran has been rebuilding the bridges, the homes that were partially or fully destroyed during the war. There's also the announcement of the Persian Gulf Authority, Persian Strait Authority that Iran has announced, which by itself sent oil prices rising again because it showed that Iran is not capitulating.
There were no casualties among the Iranian military. No Iranian military boats or ships or speedboats were attacked. And so it just shows how incompetent the military of the United States is. And they've been they hit civilian boats. The people who were on those boats, they're civilians. They've been named. The survivors were interviewed, and the boat and the damage was seen. It's evident for all. and all we see is the fever, but we don't see what's going on inside. So all we see now are high prices, high oil prices, energy prices, or food prices, but we don't see that all those products that were coming from the Persian Gulf, petrochemicals and fertilizers and different forms of energy and refined goods, all of those are used in all sorts of different factories and production lines and businesses. And each one of these that's cut off is going to cause disruption. And so you're going to have disruption across the world in the coming days and weeks, grow and grow, because now finally the shortages, the real shortages, are beginning to emerge. So
The MQ-9 Reaper costs approximately $30 million per unit. Being shot down over the strait it was supposed to protect is not just a military loss. It's a signal about Iranian air defense capability and willingness to use it. Marandi's fever metaphor is the one that I keep coming back to. What we see at the pump and at the grocery store, those are symptoms. The disease is the supply chain disruption in petrochemicals, fertilizers, pharmaceuticals, industrial gases. Those disruptions are moving through the system right now. The real price impact hasn't fully arrived. And then Marandi makes the point that reframes the entire Project Freedom story.
If the United States is winning this siege warfare, this attempt, as many American senators were gloating on Fox News, saying we're starving Iranians, they don't have any food to eat, obviously taking pleasure in this idea. But that's not happening. And if it was happening, then why would Trump go and carry out this Project Freedom, or attempt to carry out Project Freedom? He would show patience. So there's a reason why he was impatient. And that failed too. So we are where we are.
This is the tell. If the blockade were working, if Iran were really collapsing, the rational move is to wait. You don't launch a high-profile operation that can fail publicly. You wait. Trump launched Project Freedom, which means the blockade wasn't working. The patient wasn't sustainable. The official narrative, we're winning, just a little more pressure, was not the real picture. Marandi is making the same argument from inside Tehran that McGregor made from Washington. The numbers don't support the official story. And now, the moment that tells the whole story in about 30 seconds.
Right now in the United States, because of this war, as far as California, you have prices nearly $7 a gallon. Here in the East Coast, it's somewhere between $4 to $5 a gallon, $4.50, $4.60 on average. And it only is getting worse. What's going on here?
The price of gasoline in Iran is in American gallons would be 10 cents, 4 to 10 cents a gallon. I hope none of your viewers have collapsed or they faint. So it's around, I think, 4 to 10 cents a gallon, depending on the rate. There are 3 different rates for gasoline at the pump, and so and to also to make it worse, Iranian electricity is subsidized. Iranian all energy in Iran is heavily subsidized, which is not really a good thing either. I mean, it increases consumption and waste, and obviously does not create an incentive for investment and so on. But in any case, that is a reality. I mean, cheap energy is a good thing, but the government is heavily subsidizing Iranian gasoline and energy for ordinary Iranians. There have some small moves to rectify this, limited moves, but we are where we are right now, especially when it comes to gasoline.
Yeah,
and there's no shortage. At least for now, we have no shortage.
California, $7. East Coast, $4.50. Iran, 4 to 10 cents. I want to be precise about what this means and what it doesn't. Iran's gasoline is government subsidized. Marandi says so himself. It's not a free market price. It has its own economic distortions. Overconsumption, waste, underinvestment. He acknowledges all of that. But here's what the contrast actually reveals. The blockade was designed to create economic pain severe enough to force Iran's population to pressure the government into changing its position. Hit Iranians at the pump. Hit them at the store. Make them feel it hard enough that they demand a deal. That's not what is happening. Iranians are paying 10 cents a gallon. No gas shortage. The subsidized energy system has insulated the population from the specific pressure the blockade was designed to apply. Meanwhile, the people paying $7 a gallon are in California. And then, and this is the moment I rewound the video to watch again, Marandi picks up a glass of water.
Well, it's also about water. Remember when Netanyahu used to say that we don't have any water? Well, we still do. I mean, we haven't run out of water either. So, so I just drank it for the sake of Netanyahu. Yeah, I wasn't thirsty, but I couldn't I couldn't refrain from doing that.
Netanyahu made public statements about Iran's resources running out under the pressure of war and siege. Marandi, live from Tehran, picks up a glass of water and drinks it on camera in response. It's theater, but theater in service of a real point. The collapse that was promised hasn't arrived, and Iran's position is confident enough to make jokes about it on a live stream. You can dismiss the theatrics. You can't dismiss what it's illustrating. Blockade isn't producing the pain it was supposed to. The operations keep failing. And now, Marandi describes where this is heading. And the logic is the most uncomfortable thing in this conversation.
Remember, without these 5 Arab regimes in Jordan, the United States can't engage in war against Iran. It's just not possible. Logistically speaking, it's not possible. So we are where we are. It's failure after failure for Trump. But there are those in Iran who believe that Trump is gambling and he's desperate, but he thinks that maybe this time around, if he bets the house and the car and everything, if that's what you say in English, then he has a chance to win back everything and leave this victorious. But in my opinion, it's inevitable that this is going to be a catastrophic failure for the United States. But if we get into a war, even if it's a short-term war, I think the depression would be pretty. I think we can say with confidence that there will be a depression, and even if it's a short war, it could lead to a major depression, depending on if the United States starts targeting and Netanyahu starts targeting Iran's vital infrastructure. Then Iran will strike the Israeli regime's vital infrastructure and the vital infrastructure of bases and regimes across the Persian Gulf who are part of this. And if there's war and the Americans do indeed carry out their threats to destroy Iran's critical infrastructure, then Iran will do the same to the Israeli regime and the US proxies in the Persian Gulf region, which would mean that those countries will become empty of its population because it will just not be possible for people to live there anymore. That's the same would be true with American troops.
Betting the house is Marandi's read on Trump's strategic logic. And the pattern is worth taking seriously. Every time the situation looks worse, the response has been to escalate rather than exit. Unconditional surrender demand, bombing campaign, siege, Project Freedom. Each one was supposed to change the calculus. Each one failed. Each failure created pressure for the next escalation. Betting the house is what happens when you are down and every rational exit is blocked politically. And here's Marandi's most concrete warning. What happens if the next escalation targets Iranian infrastructure directly? Iran targets Gulf state infrastructure, water desalination plants, energy production, the infrastructure that makes cities like Dubai and Abu Dhabi habitable in the 115-degree summer heat. No desalination means no drinking water in 115-degree heat. That means no city. That's not hyperbole, that's physics. Whether Marandi's full framing of Gulf state motivations is accurate, that's a legitimate question. What's not in question, Iran has demonstrated the capability to strike Gulf infrastructure multiple times already. And Gulf states know it, which may explain, at least in some part, why some of them reportedly said no to Project Freedom. Marandi then addresses something that Western coverage almost completely missed: an Axios report that briefly moved oil markets. And his explanation of what that report actually was is very direct.
What, for example, Axios did yesterday was clearly an attempt to manage the markets and to manipulate the markets. And it worked with some success, at least on paper oil, as they say. But on the spot market, it's a very different situation altogether. So I'm sure that lots of money was made yesterday thanks to the fake Axios report on this one-page agreement between Iran and the United States, which was fabricated. There was no such thing at all. It was a fabrication from beginning to end. So they can bring down the prices for on paper, but that's not going to change the reality, because every day that goes by, the deficit in oil is going to increase. The deficit in LNG and natural gas and in all the pharmaceutical products, helium and the fertilizers, all these things are just going to increase. And of course, these Arab regimes in the Persian Gulf, they're not making any money, so they're probably going to have to withdraw cash from their assets, from the West, from the stock market, the bond market. And they're obviously not contributing anymore to the bond market and the stock market.
While Project Freedom was failing, oil markets briefly spiked on a single Axios report. Marandi says that report was completely fabricated, and that somebody made a lot of money off of it. Marandi's claim that the Axios report was fabricated, that no one-page deal existed, is his direct assertion from inside Tehran. I'm noting it as a strong denial from the Iranian side, not a confirmed fact independently. But the broader point about paper price versus spot price is documented and important. Official statements can temporarily suppress the paper price of oil. They cannot change the physical supply reality. And the Gulf sovereign wealth fund point is real. These states are not producing at normal levels, not generating normal revenue, and may need to liquidate Western assets to cover their own losses. The feedback loop between Gulf energy revenue and Western bond markets is being stressed, and that stress hasn't fully shown up in headlines yet. And finally, who blinks first? And whether there's any exit left.
Iran said that the United States is not going to get out of this war without paying reparations. So the question then is, first, Marandi, who blinks first? Because the United States, I know that there's a lot of people out there who believe that the U.S. can just go this path and this route forever, no matter, with Trump's irrationality and as well as the U.S.'s lust for war and its obsession with blockades and oil and all of this. I can just go on like this forever. That is actually not the case. I don't believe that the U.S. could go on and on and on forever and ever and ever. A plunge, a Great Depression actually causes a lot of calamity, even for the rich. They tend to shrink in number when Great Depressions happen. Always, there's fewer of them after a Great Depression. So there will be powerful people wanting to prevent this. But nonetheless, who blinks first, Brother Ronnie? Because Iran is saying, nope, we are not going to let the U.S. off the hook without reparations and, of course, without all these other terms that they have yet to budge on.
The Iranians have already shown extraordinary resilience, just like in Lebanon, just like in Gaza, just like in Yemen, like in Iraq. So that resilience is the war of also, discussed this before, Iran's culture, its heritage, its its civilization, its religious heritage. It makes it an extraordinarily unique in its resilience and resistance, and we've seen that. It defeated a superpower, and along with all its proxies, and the collective West, which backed it up. A single country with a couple of regional allies, and I think that Mohammed bin Zayed is probably being his advisors or giving him, feeding him the sort of information that Trump's advisors are feeding him. And both are detached from reality, as far as I can understand. I mean, you're asking me a question, I'm speculating here. I can't say for certain.
Marandi explicitly says he is speculating on that last point, and I'm flagging it clearly. His read on Trump and Mohammed bin Zayed's connection to reality is his personal assessment, not a documented fact. But his structural argument about the exit situation is harder to dismiss. Iran has publicly stated it won't exit without reparations. The US has publicly stated there will be no deal except unconditional surrender. And Danny Haifong reads Trump's actual Truth Social post on air. Trump wrote verbatim, "There will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. Make Iran great again." That's the President of the United States in writing. Trump's positions, Iran's and Trump's, that are structurally incompatible. And US intelligence internally says Iran can sustain this for months. The math on how this resolves does not add up to a deal right now. It adds up to one side running out of options before the other does. Now, here's what I keep coming back to after this conversation. The entire premise of this war, from the very first demand for unconditional surrender, was that Iran would break under pressure. Military pressure, economic pressure, the combination of the two. And Marandi, speaking live from Tehran, is telling you, the pressure hasn't produced the break. Gas is 10 cents a gallon. No water shortage. Iran is rebuilding. The foreign minister is in Beijing. Iran is in a stronger diplomatic position now than before February 28th. Not a weaker one. None of that means this ends well. It actually makes the next decision more dangerous, because the options that remain are worse than the ones that were available 3 months ago. The exit ramps are narrowing, and the people on both sides have positioned themselves where every available exit looks worse than staying. I don't adopt Marandi's full framing throughout this conversation. His characterizations of Western media, specific individuals, and US motives go further than what I can document independently. But the core factual picture, failed operations, Gulf states hedging, Iran resilient, supply chains cascading, that picture is consistent with every other serious analyst I've covered. 10 cents a gallon. That image isn't going away. Here's where we are. US intelligence, not Marandi, not me, US intelligence says Iran can outlast this blockade for months. Iran's position is no exit with no reparations. And according to Marandi, the next escalation doesn't just restart the war, it potentially empties Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And Trump just posted, "Make Iran great again." Word for word. Danny Haifong read it on air. I'm not making that up. Here's what I genuinely want to know from you. And I mean this as a real question, not rhetorical. If you're a Gulf state leader right now, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, knowing what Marandi just described about what happens to your country if this escalates, what do you do? Do you keep betting on Washington? Do you start quietly talking to Tehran? Do you try to be the broker that ends this? Because that decision, made in the next few weeks, probably in the heat of the summer, might be the one that actually determines how this ends. Tell me what you think. Comments are open. And if this is the kind of analysis you can't find anywhere else, hit subscribe. It genuinely helps. This is ARM Geopolitics. I'm Aaron Johnson. Stay sharp, stay informed, and never stop questioning. I'll see you in the next one.